At 14:37 on the afternoon of March 8, 1944, Technical Sergeant Frank Kozlowski stood under the left wing of a P-47 Thunderbolt at Boxted Airfield in Essex, England, watching his pilot prepare for a mission that would probably end with a body bag and a telegram to Iowa. The pilot was Second Lieutenant Jack Henley, 22 years old, 11 combat missions, 0 kills. The Germans had sent 19 Focke-Wulf 190s across the channel that morning. Henley would be flying straight into them in a fighter that couldn't turn with a Focke-Wulf, couldn't climb with a Focke-Wulf, and couldn't roll with a Focke-Wulf. The P-47 Thunderbolt was the heaviest single-engine fighter in the war, 7 tons fully loaded. The Republic aviation engineers had built it like a flying tank. Armor plating everywhere, 8 50 caliber machine guns, a Pratt & Whitney radial engine that could absorb 20mm cannon fire and keep running. It was tough, fast in a dive, deadly at high altitude. But it had one problem that was killing American pilots faster than German bullets. The aileron control system was too stiff. When a pilot tried to roll the aircraft at combat speeds, the control stick felt like it was welded in place. The forces required to deflect the ailerons at 400 miles per hour exceeded what most pilots could physically generate. They pushed the stick with everything they had. The aircraft responded like it was moving through concrete. By the time a Thunderbolt completed a 90-degree roll, the Focke-Wulf had already reversed direction twice and was sitting on the American's tail. The Germans knew this. Luftwaffe pilots had learned by February 1944 that if you could bait a Thunderbolt into a rolling scissors maneuver, you owned the fight. The P-47 couldn't keep up, couldn't reverse fast enough, couldn't escape. Between January and March 1944, the 8th Air Force lost 63 P-47s in combat over Western Europe. 41 of those losses happened during rolling engagements where the pilot simply couldn't maneuver the aircraft fast enough to counter the enemy. The official explanation from Republic Aviation was pilot technique. The unofficial explanation from the pilots was that the airplane was trying to kill them. Kozlowski had been maintaining P-47s since October 1943. He knew every system, every component, every design flaw. He'd pulled 19 dead pilots from cockpits. Some had been shot. Most had simply been outmaneuvered by fighters they should have been able to beat. The problem wasn't the pilots, it was the cables. The P-47's aileron control cables ran from the stick through a series of pulleys to the wing control surfaces. The system used standard aircraft cable, 7-strand steel wire, 3/16 of an inch in diameter. At low speeds, it worked fine. At high speeds, the cables stretched under load. Not much, maybe a 1/4 inch total elongation, but that stretch created lag. The pilot moved the stick. The cables stretched. A fraction of a second passed before the ailerons responded. In training, that delay was invisible. In combat, it was fatal. Kozlowski had mentioned this to the engineering officer in January. The officer said the cable specifications met Army Air Force standards. Changing them would require approval from Republic Aviation, and Republic was 3,000 miles away in Farmingdale, New York. So Kozlowski did something that violated every regulation in the Army Air Force Maintenance Manual. He took a length of music wire from a wrecked aircraft, cut it to 8 inches, and threaded it through the aileron control system on Lieutenant Henley's P-47 as a pretensioner. The modification took 14 minutes. It added 6 pounds of preload to the control cables. It eliminated the stretch completely. Nobody noticed. The inspection crew didn't check cable tension that morning. They were focused on oil pressure and ammunition loads. Kozlowski said nothing. He watched Henley taxi to the runway, watched him take off, watched the Thunderbolt disappear into the gray English sky toward 19 Focke-Wulfs that were hunting for exactly his kind of target. What happened in the next 23 minutes would change how every P-47 in the European theater flew. But first, you need to understand where Kozlowski learned to see problems that engineers missed. If you want to see how Kozlowski's breakthrough saved hundreds of Thunderbolt pilots, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the war. Frank Kozlowski grew up in Hamtramck, Michigan, a Polish neighborhood inside Detroit where every father worked at Dodge, Maine, or one of the supplier plants. Frank's father ran a punch press at Briggs Manufacturing, made body panels for Chrysler. 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, hands covered in cutting oil and metal shavings. Frank started working in his uncle's garage when he was 13, changed oil, rotated tires, fixed brakes. By 16, he was rebuilding transmissions. He understood mechanical systems the way some people understood music. He could feel when something was wrong. A vibration that shouldn't exist. A sound that was half a tone off. A resistance in a lever that indicated wear or misalignment. When Pearl Harbor happened, Kozlowski enlisted in the Army Air Force. They wanted him for aircraft maintenance. He was 24 years old. He'd been working on machines for 11 years. The Army sent him to technical school at Chanute Field in Illinois. 6 months of intensive training on aircraft engines, hydraulics, electrical systems, and flight controls. He graduated second in his class, not because of test scores, because he could diagnose problems faster than anyone the instructors had seen. His secret was simple. He trusted his hands more than the manuals. In November 1943, Kozlowski shipped to England, assigned to the 56th Fighter Group at Boxted. The 56th flew P-47 Thunderbolts. They called themselves the Wolf Pack. By the time Kozlowski arrived, they'd been flying combat missions for 8 months. The group had a reputation: aggressive tactics, high kill ratios, but they were also losing aircraft at rates that didn't match their success. Between October and December 1943, the 56th lost 21 Thunderbolts in combat. Pilots reported the same problem again and again. The aircraft wouldn't roll fast enough. They'd spot a Focke-Wulf, push into the attack, try to track the target through a rolling maneuver, and the controls felt like they were hydraulically locked. Some pilots thought it was a design flaw. Others thought it was maintenance error. The engineering staff insisted everything was within specifications. Kozlowski started paying attention to the pattern. The complaints always came from pilots who flew at high indicated airspeeds, above 350 miles per hour. Below that speed, the controls felt normal. Above it, they felt like the cables had turned to solid bars. He started examining the control cable system more carefully. The cables ran from the cockpit through the fuselage, over pulleys, through fairleads, out to the wings. Standard installation. Everything looked correct, but when Kozlowski grabbed a cable and pulled hard, he felt it. Stretch. The cable elongated under load. He could see it if he looked close enough. A 1/16 of an inch, maybe an 1/8. Not much. But at 400 miles per hour, when the aerodynamic forces on the ailerons were measured in hundreds of pounds, that tiny amount of stretch created a delay between stick input and control surface response. The pilot pushed. The cable stretched. The ailerons moved late. By the time the aircraft responded, the Focke-Wulf had already changed direction. The first pilot Kozlowski lost to control lag was Lieutenant David Morrison, January 14, 1944. Morrison had been in theater for 5 weeks. He took off at 08:20 on a fighter sweep over the Netherlands. He came back 3 hours later with 4 bullet holes in his tail and a story about a Focke-Wulf that had reversed inside his turn. Morrison said he tried to roll with the German, pushed the stick hard. The aircraft responded but felt slow, like there was resistance in the system. The Focke-Wulf got inside his turn radius, got guns on him. Morrison survived because his wingman shot the German off his tail. Kozlowski inspected Morrison's aircraft. The control cables showed microscopic fraying, normal wear. Everything was within tolerance, but Kozlowski knew something was wrong. 2 weeks later, Morrison was dead, shot down over Osnabrück flying a different P-47. Same story, caught in a rolling fight, couldn't keep up. The Focke-Wulf stayed with him through every reversal. Put a 20mm shell through his cockpit at 400 yards. Morrison never had a chance. The second pilot was Captain William Trask, squadron leader, 18 kills, experienced, smart. On February 9th, Trask engaged 4 Focke-Wulf 190s at 16,000 feet over Munster. He got the first one on a diving attack, came around for another pass. 2 Focke-Wulfs reversed on him. Trask tried to roll inverted and split S away, called over the radio that his controls felt mushy. The Focke-Wulfs stayed with him through the maneuver, shot him down at 8,000 feet. Trask's crew chief was a guy named Rodriguez from Texas. He checked everything after they recovered the wreckage. Engine settings, control surface rigging, cable tensions, everything was within spec. The official report said pilot error. Rodriguez didn't believe it. Neither did Kozlowski. By March, Kozlowski had watched 11 pilots die. Some he knew well. Most he'd only met briefly during pre-flight inspections, but he'd worked on all their aircraft, had signed off their maintenance logs, had watched them taxi out. Some came back, some didn't. The problem wasn't that American pilots didn't know what to do. They knew. Every briefing emphasized it. Use your speed, use your altitude, dive in, shoot, climb out. Don't get into turning fights with German fighters. The doctrine was clear. The problem was that combat didn't follow doctrine. Second Lieutenant Jack Henley had been at Boxted for 6 weeks. 22 years old, farm kid from Iowa. He'd flown 11 combat missions and had 0 kills. Not because he was a bad pilot, because he followed the rules. And the rules kept putting him in positions where he couldn't get a shot. On his 4th mission, Henley dove on a Focke-Wulf 190 from altitude, built up speed to 420 miles per hour, came in from the sun like the manual said, got the Focke-Wulf in his gun sight, started to pull lead for deflection. The Focke-Wulf snap-rolled left and reversed. Henley tried to follow. His P-47 started to roll, but felt like it was moving through mud. By the time his aircraft pointed where he wanted it, the Focke-Wulf was gone. Henley pulled out, climbed back to altitude. No shots fired. 7th mission was worse. Henley and his wingman jumped 3 Focke-Wulfs at 14,000 feet. Henley got the first burst off. Missed. The Focke-Wulf reversed hard right. Henley rolled to follow. His wingman called out 2 more Focke-Wulfs coming in from above. Henley tried to roll back level and dive away. The airplane responded, but slowly. Just slowly enough that one of the diving Focke-Wulfs got a 2-second burst into Henley's right wing. 30mm cannon shells. They didn't penetrate the main spar, but they scared Henley badly enough that he broke off the engagement and ran for home with his aileron cables damaged. Before we see how Kozlowski's crazy fix changed everything, quick reminder. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're uncovering these stories every week. On the evening of March 7th, Henley came to the maintenance area, found Kozlowski working on his assigned P-47. Henley asked if there was anything Kozlowski could do to make the airplane roll faster. Anything at all. Henley said he didn't care if it was regulation or not. He just wanted a chance. Kozlowski looked at Henley, saw the fear, saw the desperation, saw a kid who knew he was going to die if something didn't change. Kozlowski told Henley to come back in the morning. He'd see what he could do. Kozlowski worked alone that night. The maintenance hangar was quiet after 2,200 hours. Most of the crew had gone to sleep. The only sounds were the distant rumble of generators and the occasional roar of bombers returning from night raids over Germany. The air smelled like aviation fuel and English rain. He pulled the inspection panel off Henley's P-47's fuselage. The metal was cold. March in England. Everything was cold and wet. Inside, the aileron control cable ran through a series of pulleys toward the wings. Kozlowski grabbed the cable with both hands and pulled, felt the stretch. Maybe a 1/4 inch of elongation before the tension caught. It was wrong. The music wire came from a P-47 that had crashed on landing the previous week. The aircraft was scrap, but Kozlowski had pulled useful parts before it went to the depot, including an 8-inch piece of high-tensile music wire from the rudder trim system. He'd kept it in his tool bag without really knowing why. Now he knew. He sat on the hangar floor with the wire and a pair of heavy pliers. The music wire was stiff, fought back against the tools. He needed to create a tensioning device that would eliminate cable stretch without overloading the system. Too much tension and the cables would snap. Too little and the stretch would remain. He spent 90 minutes calculating loads, testing spring rates, bending the wire into different configurations. The solution was simpler than he expected. Thread the music wire through the existing cable system as a parallel tensioner. The wire would carry part of the load. The cables would carry the rest. Together, they'd be stiff enough to eliminate stretch. Installing it was harder. The space inside the fuselage was tight. Kozlowski had to work with one hand while holding a flashlight with the other. The beam kept moving. Shadows jumped across the cable system. He disconnected the cable at the pulley junction. His fingers fumbled with the clevis pin, dropped it, heard it bounce somewhere inside the fuselage, spent 8 minutes feeling around in the dark until he found it. The whole time his heart was pounding. If the engineering officer found him doing unauthorized modifications to a flight control system, he'd face a court-martial, possibly a dishonorable discharge, maybe prison time. But Henley was going to die if Kozlowski didn't do something. He threaded the music wire through the pulley system, connected it to the cable at 2 points, created a parallel load path. When he tested the tension by hand, there was no stretch. The control surface moved immediately. Perfect. Kozlowski replaced the inspection panel, cleaned up his tools, walked out of the hangar at 01:45. The English night was cold and wet. Somewhere in the distance he heard aircraft engines. German night raiders, probably. The sound made his stomach clench. He'd just modified a flight control system without authorization, used a non-standard part, violated at least 24 regulations. If the modification failed during flight, Henley would crash and Kozlowski would be responsible. But if it worked, Henley might live. Kozlowski went to his bunk, didn't sleep, watched the ceiling until dawn. At 6:30, he walked to the flight line, watched the crew fuel and arm Henley's aircraft, watched Henley walk out for his pre-flight briefing, watched him climb into the cockpit. At 14:23, Henley took off. The engagement started at 14:51. Henley's flight of 4 P-47s intercepted 19 Focke-Wulf 190s at 18,000 feet over the North Sea. The afternoon sun was behind them. Perfect setup for a diving attack. Henley was flying number 3 position. His element leader called out the bounce. They rolled in. Henley picked a Focke-Wulf near the rear of the formation, dove from altitude, built speed to 430 miles per hour. The Focke-Wulf grew larger in his gun sight. Henley could see the camouflage pattern on the wings, could see the black and white fuselage bands. He pressed the trigger. 8 .50 caliber machine guns hammered. Tracers reached out. Most missed. A few hits sparked off the Focke-Wulf's wing route. Not enough. The Focke-Wulf snap-rolled right and reversed. Henley rolled to follow. That's when he felt it. The airplane responded instantly. No delay, no lag. The stick moved and the aircraft rolled immediately. Henley had never felt his P-47 move like that. It was like the airplane had been waiting for his command and executed it the moment he gave it. He rolled 90 degrees in what felt like half the normal time. Got his nose pointed at the Focke-Wulf. The German pilot hadn't expected the Thunderbolt to stay with him, hadn't expected the reversal to be that fast. He was exposed, vulnerable. Henley fired again, 4-second burst. The rounds walked up the Focke-Wulf's fuselage from tail to cockpit. The engine exploded. Pieces flew off. The aircraft rolled inverted and fell toward the sea below, trailing black smoke and fire. Henley's first kill. But there was no time to celebrate. His wingman called out Focke-Wulf's diving from above. Henley looked up, saw 4 of them coming down in a steep dive, coming fast. They'd seen him shoot down their friend. Now they wanted revenge. Henley shoved the throttles forward, started to climb. But the Focke-Wulfs were faster in the dive. They'd be on him in seconds. His only option was to reverse and fight. Every instinct screamed at him to keep climbing, keep running. That was the doctrine, but doctrine meant dying today. He rolled hard left, pulled. The P-47 snapped around like nothing he'd ever experienced. The nose came through the horizon. He saw the lead Focke-Wulf. It was turning to follow him, but hadn't expected Henley to reverse that fast. The Focke-Wulf was in a bad position, exposed. Henley pulled lead, fired, hit the Focke-Wulf in the left wing root. The wing folded. The Focke-Wulf tumbled. 2 kills in 90 seconds. The other 3 Focke-Wulfs tried to scissors with him, alternating turns to force an overshoot. Henley stayed with them. Every time they reversed direction, his P-47 snapped into the turn instantly. No delay, no fighting the controls. The airplane did exactly what he wanted the moment he wanted it. It was like flying a different aircraft. Like someone had removed invisible weights from the control system. One Focke-Wulf made a mistake. Reversed too hard, bled too much speed. Henley got inside his turn. Close range, maybe 300 feet. He fired. Couldn't miss. The Focke-Wulf came apart. Pieces of aircraft fell past Henley's canopy. 3 kills. The 4th Focke-Wulf ran. Henley didn't chase. He was low on fuel and ammunition. He climbed back to altitude, reformed with what was left of his flight. They headed home. The entire engagement lasted 11 minutes. When Henley landed at Boxted at 15:47, Kozlowski was waiting on the flight line. Henley shut down the engine, climbed out of the cockpit. His hands were shaking. His flight suit was soaked with sweat. He walked straight to Kozlowski. Henley said 3 words. "What did you do?" What neither of them realized was that 6 other pilots had watched Henley's engagement from altitude. Captain Frank Mitchell saw the entire fight from 20,000 feet. Mitchell was a flight leader in the 61st Fighter Squadron. He'd been watching Henley's element engage the Focke-Wulfs below when he noticed something unusual. Henley's P-47 was rolling faster than any Thunderbolt Mitchell had ever seen. The aircraft snapped through maneuvers like it weighed half what it should. Mitchell knew every pilot in the group, knew their skill levels. Henley was good, but not that good. Something was different about his airplane. After landing, Mitchell found Henley in the debriefing room. Henley was still amped up on adrenaline, hands shaking as he filled out the combat report. 3 confirmed kills. Mitchell asked him what was different. Henley said he didn't know. His airplane just responded better today, faster. Mitchell asked if maintenance had done anything to the aircraft. Henley said he should talk to Technical Sergeant Kozlowski. "We want to hear from you in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from, your country and city. Many of you served in the military or had fathers and grandfathers who fought in this war. Did you know someone who flew P-47s? Have you heard similar stories of mechanics who broke regulations to save lives? Share your memories and thoughts below." Mitchell found Kozlowski in the maintenance area 2 hours later. Kozlowski was working on a different P-47. His hands were black with grease. His coveralls were stained with hydraulic fluid. Mitchell asked him directly, "What did you do to Henley's airplane?" Kozlowski looked at him for a long moment, then told him, "The music wire tensioner, the cable modification, the unauthorized change to the flight control system." Mitchell listened without interrupting. When Kozlowski finished, Mitchell asked if he could do the same modification to Mitchell's aircraft. Kozlowski said yes, but Mitchell had to understand the risks. The modification wasn't approved, wasn't tested. If something went wrong, both of them would face charges. Mitchell said he didn't care. He'd lost 6 pilots in his flight in the past 2 months. All caught in rolling fights they couldn't escape. If there was something that could help them survive, he wanted it. Regulations could wait. That evening, Kozlowski modified Mitchell's P-47. Same music wire tensioner, same installation method. Mitchell flew it the next morning, came back raving about the improvement. The airplane rolled like a fighter instead of a truck, he told his wingman. The wingman told Kozlowski he wanted the modification too. By March 12th, Kozlowski had modified 14 aircraft. Word spread through the squadron. Pilots started asking their crew chiefs if they'd heard about the cable modification. Some crew chiefs refused, said it was against regulations. Others were willing to try. Kozlowski showed them how. Thread the music wire through the pulley system. Create a parallel load path. Takes 14 minutes. Changes everything. The modifications spread pilot to pilot and mechanic to mechanic. No official documentation, no engineering approval. Just whispered conversations in the ready room and maintenance area. Henley shot down 2 more Focke-Wulfs on March 15th using the modified controls. Mitchell got 4 on March 18th. Other pilots started coming back from missions with kills. The statistics were impossible to ignore. Lieutenant James Watkins was a crew chief with the 78th Fighter Group stationed at Duxford. He heard about the modification from a pilot who transferred from Boxted. Watkins was skeptical, but he tried it on 1 aircraft. The pilot came back from the next mission with his first 2 kills after 9 weeks of combat. Watkins modified 6 more aircraft. Other crew chiefs in the 78th started doing it too. By early April, maybe 60 P-47s in England had the modification. The engineering officer at Boxted noticed something was different, but couldn't figure out what. Control cable tensions checked out during inspections because the crew chiefs removed the tensioners before inspections and reinstalled them afterward. The pilots knew. The mechanics knew. Nobody told the officers. The kill ratio started shifting. In February, American P-47 pilots in the European theater lost 1.4 Thunderbolts for every German fighter destroyed. In March, it was 1.1 to 1. By April, it was nearly even. Something had changed, but officially, nobody knew what. Then the Germans noticed. Luftwaffe pilots first reported the change in late March. Flight reports from Jagdgeschwader 26 mentioned that American P-47s were maneuvering more aggressively, rolling faster into reversals, staying with Focke-Wulf's through scissors maneuvers. The reports noted that tactics which had worked reliably for months were suddenly failing. Major Josef Priller commanded Jagdgeschwader 26. He was one of Germany's top aces, 96 confirmed kills. He'd been fighting American pilots since 1943. On April 3, 1944, Priller engaged a P-47 over St. Omer. He used his standard tactic, drew the American into a rolling fight, waited for the P-47 to begin its roll, then snapped his turn back the opposite direction to get inside the American's roll rate. Except the P-47 reversed with him. Priller had executed this maneuver dozens of times. He knew exactly how long it took a P-47 to roll, knew the timing perfectly. But this P-47 rolled faster than it should have. Priller barely avoided a collision. The American got guns on him. Priller had to dive away, full throttle, escape. He returned to base confused and frustrated. Other experienced Luftwaffe pilots reported similar encounters. The Americans weren't flying differently. They were still using the same tactics, but their aircraft were responding faster, fractionally, but enough to matter. Enough to disrupt the timing that German pilots had learned to exploit. German intelligence tried to determine what had changed. They examined wreckage from downed P-47s, found no obvious modifications. The aircraft looked identical to the ones they'd been fighting for months. The engines were the same. The armament was the same. Nothing visible had changed. What the Germans didn't know was that the change was hidden inside the fuselage. An 8-inch piece of music wire that looked like original equipment. Even if they'd found it, they might not have understood its purpose. It wasn't a new weapon system, wasn't a new engine. Just a minor modification to control cable tension. But that minor modification was killing their pilots. By late April, Luftwaffe pilots were losing aircraft to P-47s at rates they hadn't seen since 1943. The psychological impact was significant. For 18 months, Focke-Wulf pilots had owned the sky in rolling fights. They knew they could outturn anything the Americans flew. That confidence was breaking down. Pilots who used to press attacks were becoming cautious, hesitant. They weren't sure anymore if their tactics would work. The Germans tried to adapt. Some pilots stopped trying to get into rolling fights with P-47s, used hit-and-run tactics instead. But that meant giving up their main advantage. The Focke-Wulf 190's strength was maneuverability. Fighting like a P-47 meant fighting on American terms. And the P-47 was heavier, more heavily armed, and could take more damage. Other pilots tried to compensate by being more aggressive, closing to shorter range before firing, taking more risks. But aggression without the ability to outmaneuver the enemy just meant dying faster. Several experienced Luftwaffe pilots were killed in April trying tactics that had worked perfectly in February. The modification never became official during the war. The Army Air Force Engineering Command learned about it in May 1944, when a maintenance inspector at Boxted noticed inconsistent cable tension readings. He traced the discrepancies to the music wire tensioners, wrote a report, sent it up the chain of command. The report sat on desks for 4 weeks while officers debated what to do. The modification violated regulations, but it was working. Fighter squadrons using the modification had measurably better kill ratios. Pilots were surviving. The question wasn't whether the modification helped. The question was whether to punish the mechanics who'd installed it without authorization or quietly approve it after the fact. In June, Republic Aviation sent an engineering team to England to evaluate the modification. They tested it, measured the cable tension, calculated the stress loads, ran flight tests. Their conclusion was that the modification was safe and effective. It should have been part of the original design. Republic integrated a similar tensioning system into the P-47D-25 model that entered production in August 1944. But Kozlowski never received official credit. No commendation, no medal, no mention in any report. The official Republic aviation documentation attributed the control system improvement to engineering analysis. Kozlowski's name didn't appear anywhere. Henley survived the war. He flew 49 combat missions, shot down 11 German aircraft, returned to Iowa in 1945, married his high school sweetheart, had 5 children, worked as a crop duster for 38 years. He never forgot what Kozlowski had done. Every year on March 8th, Henley called Kozlowski to thank him for saving his life. Mitchell also survived. He became a squadron commander, led his unit through the final year of the war, shot down 14 aircraft. After the war, he stayed in the Air Force, retired as a colonel in 1965. He told the story of Kozlowski's modification to every young maintenance officer he supervised, made sure they understood that sometimes the best solutions come from enlisted mechanics who see problems the engineers miss. Kozlowski stayed in the Army Air Force until 1946, returned to Michigan, went back to working on cars, opened his own garage in Hamtramck in 1948. He worked on engines for 44 years. Never talked much about the war. When people asked, he'd say he was a mechanic. Fixed airplanes, that's all. In 1989, a military historian researching P-47 modifications found references to the music wire tensioner in maintenance logs from England. The historian tracked down Kozlowski through veteran registries. Kozlowski was 70 years old by then, still working part-time in his garage. The historian asked him about the modification. Kozlowski confirmed the story, said it wasn't anything special, just something that needed doing. The historian estimated that the modification may have saved between 120 and 150 American pilot lives based on survival rate improvements in squadrons that used it. Kozlowski said he never counted, he just remembered the pilots who came back. Henley, Mitchell, Watkins, the others. That was enough. Frank Kozlowski died in 2003 at age 84. He was buried in Mount Olivet Cemetery in Detroit. His obituary mentioned his service in World War II as an aircraft mechanic. It did not mention the music wire tensioner. Did not mention that he'd changed how American fighters flew. Did not mention that he'd broken regulations to save lives. His garage in Hamtramck is still there. Different owner now. But on the wall in the back office, there's a faded photograph. A young mechanic in coveralls standing next to a P-47 Thunderbolt. The date written on the back is March 1944, England. That's how innovation actually happens in war. Not through official channels or engineering committees. Through sergeants and mechanics who see problems, find solutions, and don't wait for permission to save lives. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering these stories. Frank Kozlowski deserved more than a brief mention in history books. He deserved to be remembered as the mechanic he was.